Congratulations, congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah.
Thank you to everyone. Thanks.
Hello team, the webinar has been initiated and you all can start in next 15 seconds.
Ravan, can you switch?
I don't know what is happening right now. Can anyone? Are we?
Are we public?
Yeah, I also would like to know. I don't see. I only see.
Yes, we are public. The attendees
Okay,
have
we are
started
public.
joining.
Okay, thank you.
We have 41 attendees at the moment.
Perfect. 47, 57 now. Thank you.
Yeah, 57 with us. Yeah.
Welcome everyone. We will be starting shortly within the next minute or so. We're just waiting for more participants to join us. And we lost the music, did we?
I thought you say you don't like Zouk.
Oh, I didn't say anything. I like all music.
Can we have some soca or reggae,
Yeah.
please?
Can you go ahead and put it some X-ray?
Yeah. Let's see.
But if I put music, I
yeah,
cannot share
change the
the
music
screen.
on your side, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the screen or the music. I cannot have
You can
both.
share. No, the music.
The music. Then.
Yeah, share the music. I stopped mine.
Welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to see that so many have joined already, and we will be starting shortly. We are looking for music, but so far it's quite silent, but we will be starting shortly. Thank you for joining us. Regine and Ushua, yeah, I think better than to just put on the PowerPoint presentation. Again, welcome everyone that is just joining. We will be starting shortly. Here we come. I'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
In the meantime, I will put some music.
You can't hear the music Carlos Manuel, I hear something in mine. No,
Not really.
no. Or maybe it is in my
I
head.
can't actually.
Okay, so just put on the
So the music
PowerPoint
is on
presentation.
board, but it is too low.
Okay.
I think you
So
have to disable the noise cancellation settings on Zoom because it considers the music to be the noise.
I think we should get started. Could we please put on the PowerPoint presentation or the slides? I'm just double checking. Yes, we have. Let's get started. Good morning and welcome everyone to this CSO consultation, which is just the Friday before the 70th GEF Council meetings. I know that for some of you over there, it's middle of the night, and for others, really early mornings. Either time zone you are in, we are very, very pleased to have you here today. And I see that we already have close to 100 participants, and this really reconfirms that the topic that we have in front of us today to discuss today is something that interests so many of you, and we're very much looking forward to the discussions that we're going to have. Before I introduce myself and what we're going to do here today, I just wanted to remind you that this event has interpretation, and thank you so much to all of the interpreters here today. You can select, if you click look down at your screen, you can select English, French, or Spanish. So please do that if you need translations. Well, with that, maybe I should introduce myself. My name is Gabriella Richardson-Tem. I lead the GEF's Small Grants Program and Engagement with Civil Society at the GEF Secretariat in Washington, D.C. And I'm very happy to be here today and to guide this consultation. The Secretariat has a long tradition of organizing these CSO consultations. We started this already, I think, in 2018 and has since then have organized over 10 of these. This one is a little bit extra special. This one has been planned and co-hosted with the CSO network, and we're very pleased to have them here, and I see that we have a lot of the CSO network members here. And this is really a special one because it is the last CSO consultation that we're going to have in GEF 8. It's very timely because it is just happening before the third GEF 9 replenishment meeting. So the conversations here today are really critical for informing the replenishment meetings, the one later in January. I think you can go to the next slide. Well, I think that the next slides should outline the objectives of these CSO consultations. It's basically going to be a time for us to take stock of what we have done in GEF 8, but also, and more so, really looking towards GEF 9, focusing on what we have done in terms of the whole of society approach in the GEF, how we are engaging and supporting civil society, indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth in the GEF programming. We're hoping that this consultation would provide opportunities for us to learn on ways that we can further enhance and strengthen our whole of society approach in GEF 9 and consider new entry points and ideas for us to take forward as we move to the GEF 9. So we have a fabulous, you can go to the next slide. We have a great agenda in front of us, an event. We will start by our lead of our partnership program to really take a stock of what we have done so far in GEF 8, including our target information, our targeted programs including the Small Grants Program and the Inclusive Conservation Program that provides direct financing to civil society, indigenous peoples, youth and women groups all around the world. This would follow with a reflection by the CSO network that has been very actively engaging in the GEF 9 replenishment period. This will be followed by a conversation led by Sagar Arial, where we're super excited that we have our council member, Richard Bontier from Australia, joining us, and Hoda El Shawati, who has been active and a GEF replenishment member from Egypt, and Faisal Parish, who is the chair of the CSO network. We're very much looking forward to this discussion to hear their reflections on the whole of society approach. We were then and very pleased to have our CEO from the GEF Secretariat, Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, joining us in the conversation. And then we are very excited also that we will open the floor for questions and answers following the reflections by others. So with that, I would be happy to hand over to Adriana Moira, who is the lead of the GEF's partnership division, and she will provide an overview of what we have been doing in GEF 8, taking stock of what we have been doing, and provide information on our programs and activities supporting civil society. Over to you, Adriana.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Great pleasure to be with you all here again. Thank you for all this commitment to the GEF and to these dialogues. We actually have been having this for almost more than 7 years now. You know, so many of them, we usually have them twice a year. And it's always very energizing and in preparation for our council meetings. But not only that, we have substantial engagement with all the different groups that relates to the GEF. And I'm going to have here a very brief presentation that does not encompasses all the activities. We don't have time for that. But since the creation, the GEF has consistently worked to strengthen this engagement with civil society, especially with indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth. This presentation very briefly outlines the key achievements in GEF 8, and as Gabriela mentioned, we are, starting to unfold the GEF 9 vision. And Sagar will have, go into more detail in what we have done in terms of this dialogue with civil society and all these groups as we co-create this vision to further integrate all these partners in driving transformation change across GEF programs and projects. Next slide, please. I want to start by highlighting the basis for this engagement, the GEF policies on environmental, social safeguards, stakeholder engagement, gender equality, and indigenous peoples, as they are the pillars for our engagement, and they set very clear principles and mandatory requirements for our operations. These policies ensure transparency, accountability, inclusion, and effective participation throughout the project cycles and throughout the GEF cycles. Associated with the policies, we have 3 main engagement platforms. The CSO network that has been our partner since almost the inception of the GEF, the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group, created under GEF 7, and the GEF Gender Partnership. We're looking at creating new partnerships, probably a new youth partnership, and additional frameworks that support the GEF management funds, such as the LDCF and the GBFF. Now I'm going to show a little bit of what we have been doing in GEF 8 under our dedicated windows the special sources of funding for direct funding of civil society organizations. The Small Grants Program is our flagship mechanism, being supporting civil society, youth, and women and indigenous peoples and local communities led projects and initiatives for more than 30 years. But under the GEF 8, we substantially transformed the GEF 8, the SGP. We even call it SGP 2.0, expanding the ambition, the scale, the governance, and the delivery models of the project, basically touching now pillars. So we have had very strong successes in increasing the choice of implementing agencies. That's the business model that the GEF adopts. We have a very lean secretariat at the GEF, and we work through our partners. There are 18 implementing agencies. And for the SGP program, we now have, together with UNDP, our partner since the inception of the program, we have FAO and Conservation International as new partners in the program since GEF 8. We also have doing a lot of effort to augment the coverage of the program, and we have successfully now reached 135 countries out of the 144 countries, in a record-breaking coverage of 93%. Sorry. We also have increased the resources in comparison to GEF 7, including very significant, more than 30% increase in the allocation of the GEF star allocation to countries in addition to the core resources. We also have innovated with new approaches, such as the CSO challenge with new partners as the IUCN, and the microfinancing initiative with the World Bank. These are ongoing programs that are creating a lot of impact and also diversifying the partnerships for GEF, for the Small Grants Program. We also focusing on processes and increasing efficiency, increasing the grant ratio, and focusing on how we capture resources, results, and our indicators. And now moving to the next slide on our inclusive conservation initiative. And this program is focused on particularly on indigenous peoples and local communities. And it was launched on the GEF 7 and provides direct large-scale funding for indigenous peoples. This program recognized the gap between their environmental role and the resources they directly receive. This slide shows the evolution of the project from GEF 7 to GEF 8. And in GEF 8, we receive a record-breaking number of expression of interest from indigenous-led organizations all over the planet, more than 800 proposals. We are finalizing the selection process, and we hope that we will select a new portfolio of projects as impactful and as bringing results as the 10 selected in the previous round, with more than 12 countries participating. We have named this program as inclusion conservation because this is where the indigenous peoples and the local communities provide a very important play a very important role in protecting the biodiversity of these countries. But it's important to highlight that most of the IPLC support in the GEF continues to the regular programming in the family of funds, and notably more recently by the GBFF notional target of 20% allocation of resources directly to IPSCs. So next, please. In relation to youth, we have also a very brand new program that was approved during GEF 8, actually in December of 2022, where the council approved a $10 million allocation for the creation of the Gustavo Fonseca Youth Conservation Leadership Program. This program is very dear to us. It focuses on supporting young conservationists and building not only supporting traditional academic training, such as support for masters and PhDs, but also supporting field work, engagement in leadership training, and a whole array of capacity building. We have been able to make a lot of progress in the program, now having 11 international institutions that are throughout the globe. More than 250 fellows are now supported by the program globally from 54 countries, and in an amazing cohort of very strong young leaders already creating impact in their fields. It's very important to highlight that many of these investments are directly related with GEF projects on the ground. Many of these students are doing research in GEF, within GEF projects, and provide information to governments, and are even part now of government panels for discussing reports to the conventions and other participation in higher level decision making in their respective countries. So proving not only the excellence in science, but also in the influence and impact in policy formulation. So, and another aspect of our program, this is related directly to the counter engagement strategy in the next slide. The GEF supports directly the participation of civil society organizations, indigenous peoples, women and youth representation in COPs and related international events. And all these events associated with the multilateral environmental agreements that the GEF serves as a financial mechanism. And examples, very recent examples from this year include the amazing program that we have, partnerships we have with the Youth Negotiator Academies for training, practical training and capacity building of young negotiators that integrate government delegations. And many of young negotiators are government employees and delegates that directly participate in the discussion. In this picture, you see our CEO with the group in the climate COP in Belém that was last month. Also, one of the breakthroughs we have in this program recently was the support for the creation of the first Indigenous Peoples Caucus in the Minamata Convention, in a Minamata Convention COP. This was a direct support by the request of the Minamata Convention Secretary to the GEF, and the GEF provided its expertise on the engagement with indigenous peoples leaderships globally, and we're very pleased with starting and influencing such an important dialogue within the issues of the impacts of mercury pollution on indigenous peoples' populations. So this is a very brief summary, as I mentioned, what all of we're doing in the dedicated windows on the GEF. I now want to touch very briefly on the next slide on the vision we're building for implementation of a fully resourced and operational whole of society approach, very much aligned with a whole of government approach that is the pillars of our GEF 9 vision collective, integrating the perspectives and expertise of non-government actors. And Sagaro is going to explain how this process is we are doing in close collaboration with the CSO network and how we are bringing out this expertise to foster more effective and inclusive policies. I have highlighted in this slide what we have, our goals for the dedicated windows, but overall, we're planning to allocate at least 10% of the resources. This is one of the our CEO vision and leadership. This is one of the targets he set for us to CSOs, IPLCs, youth and human. Also expanding the dedicated windows for this group, but more importantly, very importantly, mainstreaming into the bulk of resources of the GEF and the STAR allocation on the focal areas and integrated programs, initiatives, and projects. Also important to highlight our partners in the private sector and the philanthropies in engagement to support inclusive society-led solutions. And I conclude in this next slide by inviting you to explore the latest drafts of the GEF programming and policy directions on our website. We're going to put the link in our chat box here. This is an ongoing process. It's very important to explain. Then we go for a year and a half of preparation for the replenishment. We have an upcoming third meeting in end of January. This is all going to come to fruition in our assembly in June 2026. But I want to highlight that this has been direct impact of the dialogue with civil society, indigenous peoples, and local communities representation in the policy directions, in the programming directions. And that's why I'm inviting you to look at these documents, because they reflect the valuable inputs from the CSO network, from the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group representatives, working, co-creating with the donor and recipient countries to shape an inclusive agenda that amplifies the voice and the impact of civil society, of indigenous peoples, of local communities, women and youth as our allies in bringing transformational change in GEF9. Thank you so much, and let's hear from you.
Thank you,
Gabriela.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for showcasing all of the investments that we've been doing to support civil society and indigenous peoples, youth and women groups around the world, and also outlining the approach being written as it is for GEF9. So thank you so much, Adriana. And let me now hand over to Sagar Arial. He is the head of the CSO Network Technical Committee. He has been extremely engaged in the replenishment negotiations over the last year, where he has also led something that the CSO network calls the Hall of Society talks. He has had organized 3 of these together with the CSO network, and he will outline a little bit of the CSO network's reflections on the replenishment process so far in relationship to the Hall of Society approach. He will also, of course, draw from some of the discussions that and recommendations has been held as part of the Hall of Society talks. So over to you, Sagar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. And for all of you who are joining us, thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you who are here again, thank you again. Thank you for coming again. First of all, I'm very grateful to co-host this consultation together with GEF Secretariat for the first time. Thank you for making that happen. We are only a few days away from the 70th Council meeting, and this consultation takes place at a very important moment for GEF9. As Adriana shared earlier, over the course of GEF 8, the Secretariat and the CSO network have engaged widely with civil society, indigenous people, local communities, women, and youth. This includes the technical advisory group discussions on whole of society earlier this year, the CSO consultation in May on operationalizing the approach, and the whole of society talks that we've been organizing over the last months. Along these processes, there is a strong convergence on one point. Whole of society cannot remain a principle on paper. It must function as an engine for delivery. I'm going to quickly share some slides here so we can follow along together. Let me know when you can see. Yes? Okay. So earlier this year, we formulated some demands and have continuously worked to make them reality in GEF 9. These demands that we worked together as a part of the technical advisory group discussions, previous council, and GEF 9 representative meetings, and the whole of society talks. And our goal here is not to redefine whole of society, but to reflect on where are we now and what implementation will require. This slide that I'm sharing was shared also in the last CSO consultation, so I will be a bit brief. While we appreciate GEF's openness on whole of society, several gaps remain clear. First, whole of society must move beyond consultation and become part of implementation. And second, we need to scale what already works. Mechanisms like SCP and ICI are proven, but they are not yet reaching their full potential. Third, barriers continue to limit access. There are administrative burdens, co-financing, and participation cost, which still exclude many CSOs, youth, women, and indigenous people and local communities. Finally, we have seen a long-term decline in civil society-led medium and full-size projects leading to GEF 8. This trend runs counter to the ambition of GEF 9. So these points frame the question of where GEF 9 stands today and how far current commitments translate into delivery. Building on the areas where stronger commitment is needed, the question is how these issues have been examined in practice. So over the past months, together with the Civil Society Network, I have been hosting the whole of society talks as a structured space for dialogue across different thematic areas central to the GEF, together with GEF stakeholders like council members, agency leads, and people who are working on the ground. These discussions have generated concrete evidence and insights that have fed into the GEF 9 replenishment process, which I and myself and Faisal have been leading on behalf of the CSO network. One key shift that emerged from the whole of society talks was the move from access to influence. In the discussions on funding for small CSOs, we heard that while access exists, entry barriers remain high and the participation cost limits sustained engagement. In parallel, we heard that voices are heard, but influence over design and decisions remain still very, very much limited. A second shift from the whole of society talks focused on delivery. Inclusion, as we talk, requires adequate and predictable resources. Currently, community and indigenous-led actions remain underfunded. At the same time, practices within GEF projects show that when local leadership is supported, outcomes are stronger. Therefore, one of our key takeaways is that for whole of society to work in GEF 9, funding, accountability, and power sharing must move together. The next question is where GEF 9 currently stands in relation to these expectations. On the policy side, signals are incredibly strong. GEF 9 includes clear whole of society language, openness to increased risk appetite, agency diversification, and recognition of CSOs and indigenous people and local communities as delivery actors. In many ways, this reflects significant progress at the policy level. On the budget side, the alignment is more limited. The SCP represents about 2.9 to 3.5% if GEF 9 envelope, roughly 185 million if ambition matches GEF 8. At the same time, the non-grant instruments has doubled to 10% without a comparable scaling of whole of society mechanisms. To close, this slide simply reflects what it would take to align whole of society commitments with delivery, simplifying access, mainstreaming whole of society across instruments and GEF programs, backing inclusion with clear indicators, and reversing the decline in CSO-led projects, and through increased funding are all part of that alignment. This is not about new proposals, but about matching commitments with how resources are structured. So with this on the slides, again, let me stop sharing my screen. It's important to highlight that communities facing climate and biodiversity crisis cannot wait for the impact to trickle down. Across regions, civil society, indigenous people, youth, and local communities are already leading action. Yet barriers remain in participation, influence, and access to finance. So today's consultation, or as we've organized the whole of society talks, is forward-looking. It gives us a space for us to reflect on progress towards GEF 9 so far, discuss what is needed to move from commitments to practice, and identify practical entry points for strengthening whole of society implementation during GEF 9. This is also a chance for civil society to engage directly with council members and the GEF CEO ahead of the third replenishment meeting in January. The format today is a facilitated conversation followed by reflection and open discussions. And I will now move to the introduction of our panelists today. First, we have Richard. Richard is also the co-chair of GEF Council and a senior Australian diplomat leading Australia's climate diplomacy and multilateral environment engagement with more than 2 decades of experience in senior positions. Next, we have Hoda El Safadi. She's Africa's regional representative for the GEF 9 replenishment and a senior environmental policy leader. She serves as assistant to Egypt's Minister of Environment for Ecotourism Affairs and previously represented North Africa, on the GEF Council. Next, we have Faisal Paris. Faisal is the chair of GEF CSO Network and director of Global Environment Center and has been working with civil society for more than 30 years. And finally, we are joined by Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, CEO of GEF. I believe he's somebody who needs no introduction in this call here, and whose leadership has shaped GEF and its global impact in the last decade. With that, let's dive in. Richard, let me start with you. The whole of society approach is widely supported, yet the implementation remains uneven. From Australia's perspective, what concrete financing approaches could GEF 9 use to increase and simplify resources reaching civil society, indigenous people, youth, and local communities? And setting aside innovation and risk, purely from a financing design perspective, are there specific instruments, set asides, or program design choices Australia sees as particularly promising?
Thank you, Sagar. And firstly, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's fantastic to see the degree of participation in this dialogue. So thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel. As we have heard, a whole of society approach is central to achieving environmental and development outcomes. Indigenous peoples, local communities host, live and manage nearly a quarter of the Earth's surface and vast ocean areas that together hold 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. Last year, the inaugural Global Nature Positive Summit held in Sydney highlighted the critical role of Indigenous peoples and local communities in addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and plastic pollution. I'd like you all to reflect on a lovely phrase that I heard recently by Nicole Redvers and colleagues. Indigenous languages are like a musical blueprint of the traditional ecological knowledges that stretch back thousands of years. This captures the environment, culture, and language are all inseparable and reflect the central importance of sustainability that the modern Western world is struggling to achieve and address. Over recent decades, Indigenous peoples' knowledge are increasingly recognised as critical in curbing biodiversity loss and protecting the planet. Traditional ecological knowledges are deeply rooted within Indigenous names, oral traditions, and taxonomies, and provide a wealth of opportunity to enhance global efforts across climate change, climate adaptation, desertification, plastic pollution, so on and so forth. The GEF was established to address and achieve global environmental outcomes. They are fundamentally linked to Indigenous peoples, local communities, civil society, and youth. Indigenous peoples and local communities have managed variability, uncertainty, and change through multi-generational histories of interaction with the environment. The GEF needs to empower Indigenous peoples and local communities to conserve their territories, safeguard traditional knowledge, and promote integrated biodiversity management. To take the ocean as an example, across Australia, First Nation communities implement initiatives such as Sea Country Plans, range of programs, Indigenous protected areas, and traditional use of marine resource agreements, and engage in sustainable commercial fishing, placing the well-being of the environment at the forefront. They are forging new partnerships and leading initiatives in the ocean sector, creating long-term opportunities that respect connection to the country. Country ownership is critical, and this needs to extend to genuine engagement with Indigenous peoples, local community, civil society, and youth. We face great challenges and have much to achieve together. These issues and the way forward links directly to civil society engagement and ownership. Recognition of the opportunity to accelerate results is a prerequisite to the action, and that's the purpose of being here today. GEF 9 must ensure a focus on civil society, Indigenous peoples and youth so that they are central to the GEF's work. And as Saga has just pointed out, it's not just about consultation, it's about active engagement, ownership, and a direct role in implementation. I think there's a range of things that the GEF can do better, but I'd like to turn to two concrete financing approaches. And that relates to the small grants program and expecting more from the accredited agency network. And Sagar also mentioned the concentration issue. So firstly, talking about the small grants program, Australia has actively advocated for an increased financial allocation to the small grants program to strengthen civil society and IPLC engagement to better track socio-economic co-benefits, including livelihoods, resilience, gender, and to harmonise indicators across fund. The small grants program is an important program which has proven the most effective means of engaging civil society, Indigenous people and local communities with an appropriate scale of funding. We are pleased to see the Small Grants Program opening up to others in the Small Grants Program 2.0, building on success of UNDP. It is challenging for multilateral funds to reach Indigenous peoples and local community, yet the Small Grants Program results demonstrate is striking the right balance between impact and efficiency. The Small Grants Program has been a standout success across the Pacific in our region, effectively targeting lower value investments with less governance requirements for enhanced results. But we can improve, and as I've already indicated, we would actively support an increase in the scale of the Small Grants Program. Secondly, turning to accredited entities, if we look at the broader environment within the GEF, within which the GEF operates, the social and economic infrastructure, a key element is the GEF accredited entities, yet arguably none are currently set up to be Indigenous or locally led. To achieve the GEF's desired impact, we need to facilitate two significant changes. Firstly, to increase the effectiveness for Indigenous peoples and local communities of existing accredited entities and working with implementation partners. And then secondly, look to selectively expand to draw in new accredited entities with the necessary skills, specific expertise in partnering and engagement with Indigenous peoples and local communities with regional context. We need projects proposals coming forward that put these issues at the forefront and of the implementation rather than an afterthought. It needs to move beyond just consultation. I'd like to touch on an important point, which is the role of the private sector. We all know that sovereign contributions alone are not sufficient. We need to look at co-financing, the role of private sector, both in terms of contributions, but also their role in implementation. Increasing opportunities for the private sector to engage is important, particularly to catalyse additional funding and encourage business models that work for the environment and livelihoods. We need the GEF to support this in a way that increases funding and also engages with the Indigenous peoples and local communities. Our policy levers need to work together increasing balancing the non-grant instruments so the GEF does not pull away from those areas, resulting in disadvantage. We encourage the GEF and the multilateral development banks to do this, but not at the cost of the of engagement to Indigenous peoples and local communities. Just to conclude, the GEF is doing a tremendous amount to deliver a whole of society approach, but it can do better. We need civil society, Indigenous peoples and local communities, and youth engagement across the whole GEF portfolio. It is not sufficient to have a focus primarily through the Small Grants Program, SCCF, and the LDCF. It needs to be front and center in the core elements of the operation of the GEF Trust Fund. Expanding the capacity of the accredited entities is one way of achieving this. We also need to simultaneously build on what works by expanding the Small Grants Program and other programs that currently deliver for Indigenous peoples and local communities. But I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Couldn't agree more that whole of society needs to be at the front and center. With that, I would like to turn to you, Hoda. As a recipient country from Egypt, mobilizing whole of society action often depends on national system, policies, and capacities. From Egypt's perspective, what are the main challenges to mobilizing civil society, Indigenous peoples, youth, and local communities within national GEF programming? And what type of GEF support or flexibility would make this mobilization more effective under GEF 9?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to this panel, and I'm grateful to be part, of course, and representing the whole Africa as a regional representative during the ninth replenishment. When it comes to Egypt, a little bit, it's a different model. I think some countries, more or less, some of them are like Egypt, and some maybe have a different model. But in Egypt, a little bit, it's different, as we do have the small grant program, for example, that we are benefiting a lot. And Egypt, from its star allocation, I think since the GEF, the cycle 5, we started, to fund throughout the star allocation of Egypt to be put into the resources to make sure that the national priorities are there and are met, and implemented properly. And we wanted to benefit and to engage more youth, gender, and to have the gender balance, and to include the local communities as much as we can. Of course, it's not that easy, by the way, to include everyone on board. Yes, the small grant program is doing a great job helping the government, of Egypt fulfilling, and including all of this. But it's not all of that. Maybe we are struggling a little bit when it comes to the co-finance, the available resources for the small grant program and integrating them more systematically, into the national GEF programming a little bit. Yes, we are trying to connect with the full-size project, medium-size.
I believe we have lost Hoda. Let's give her.
I believe we lost her. Is she still online?
Yeah, let's give her
a
moment. Hoda, I believe we lost you for a moment. I think you're back now, if you can hear us. Okay,
we lost her.
Yeah, we lost her. I would suggest we continue with the panel, and we will get back to Hoda when she comes back. So Richard, back to you again. Beyond financing architecture, GEF 9 emphasizes.
I just joined from my mobile.
Sorry.
If it's fine.
Yes, please. You may continue. We lost you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to close this one. The laptop. I don't know which part did you hear or not, because a little bit, I don't know if it went well when did you hear my intervention at the start, or should I start again?
No, we heard quite a bit of it, just the last part. I think last 10, 15 seconds we did not hear.
Okay, I was saying that maybe, a little bit when it comes to the small grant program, yes, we do have lots of resources, but we are facing lots of challenging, of course, because the amount that we are providing for the program is not efficient to include everyone. So we are trying to to select as much as we can, the more relevant to the full size and the medium size project, to be aligned together and to make sure that the sustainability part, the gender inclusion, the youth inclusion are there, but still it's not that easy. So maybe I can see this throughout the last, maybe I saw this change with the GEF team and GEF, process, including everyone, starting the GEF 8 assembly. We saw, including everyone there. The youth were there, the local community, the indigenous people, the youth, we can hear them. And during the 9th replenishment, I can see this is well properly managed. You are here, all of you. I'm here already with you right now. Your voice I heard, and I think maybe engaging everyone and to see and provide more information a little bit. How can we work together and closely so that the CSO part or the small grant program, can benefit, and at the same time the countries can benefit. And by the end of the day, a country cannot do the work on ground by its own. If it's not, the sustainability part cannot be done without the civil society, the local community use, and the gender, to have the gender balance. So more or less, yes, to have a more flexible entry point when it comes to the upcoming GEF 9 portfolio. And I can see that more or less most of the, not the negotiation, but can I see most of the parts that has been highlighted throughout the CSO, to raising a little bit the amount to have their support, to raise their capacity and stuff like that. It's fine, but put in mind that the country also need, a little bit, we have to sort of it, so having sort of a balance by end of the day. Thank you for this. And I hope that I answer your part maybe clearly.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Hoda. I absolutely agree with you that it's not easy to involve everyone, but also without involving everyone, we cannot get where we want to get. With that, back to you, Richard. Beyond financing architecture, GEF 9 emphasizes innovation, yet many civil society and youth-led initiatives face both limited risk tolerance and limited resources. From Australia's perspective, how can GEF 9 increase its risk appetite while also scaling and better resourcing existing mechanisms that already support civil society, such as established access channels and community-focused windows? How can this be done in a way that improves access, enables innovation, and remains accountable to the results that matter to people and nature?
Thank you, Sega. The risk appetite of the GEF was only considered last year, and it's surprising that an institution with such a long history hadn't actively considered risk appetite and left it to the individual agencies to look at that profile. And as part of the agreement of the risk appetite is a common understanding we need to accept that high level of risk. And that's critical if we're going to achieve innovation, if we're going to, the GEF is going to operate in difficult contexts, and also if it's going to achieve results in working and doing things in different ways. And I think that includes working with civil society, Indigenous peoples, and taking a very different approach. So the GEF's existing stated risk appetite is to accept a high level of risk, reflecting that we want the GEF to strive for more innovative approaches to achieve greater impact and results. And as I said in my first comments, if we want to achieve greater impact and results, that means working with Indigenous peoples, local communities, and broader groups as a whole of society approach. The accrediting entities and implementing entities need to develop proposals that accept and manage risk to achieve the results both for global environmental benefits and for civil society, Indigenous people and youth. It's incumbent on those entities to bring these projects forward, and we need to encourage this. The partnership model of the GEF means that these ideas need to come from that partnership rather than generated from the centre. This ties to my earlier point on who the accredited entities are and what skills they need to bring as part of the proposal development and the implementation process. We need to implement the agreed GEF risk appetite across all elements of project design and implementation, not in a fragmented way. This remains a work in progress, but there is good progress that is being made. In addition, for existing projects to engage with civil society, Indigenous people and youth, it is important that GEF receives more direct feedback from groups and reporting on the degree to which these groups have ownership of deliverables. Forums such as this one, I think, are really important as part of that process. I'd like to touch on some Australian example, just bringing my perspective to the discussion. Through our own development assistance program, Australia seeks to leverage local leadership, knowledge, networks, and cultural understanding to deliver effective assistance and to strengthen local institutions and delivery mechanisms, whether government or non-government. Australia recognises that this can maximise value for money by eliminating parallel systems, strengthening local institutions, and develop improved delivery mechanisms. Investing in local leadership and capability also enables the growth of domestic, whether that be public, private, or non-profit, service and supply chains capable of project implementation. We're also learning much from First Nations peoples. The Australian government has been working to elevate the perspective of First Nations Australians to the heart of our development program. This will, of course, take time and involve new ways of working, but building better connections with our domestic and international experiences is creating opportunities for mutual learning and benefits to us all. The reason I'm explaining that context is those are the views and perspectives I bring as a council member to the GEF. There's a lot more we can do and learn from what's happening internationally. The GEF is doing, I think, a good job, but I think it needs to do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Now I want to come back to Faisal for his reaction. Faisal, building on what you've heard from Australia with Richard and Hoda from Egypt, from the CSO network perspective, where do civil society organizations see the biggest disconnect between GEF ambition on finance, innovation, and risk-taking, and what CSOs experience in practice when trying to access existing GEF mechanisms?
Thank you very much, Saga, and thank you, Richard and Hoda, for your insights. I think as Richard highlighted, Indigenous people and local community really are one of the key mechanisms. Engaging that traditional knowledge is critical if we're going to address the triple climate crisis that we're facing, and the thousands of years of stewardship of the land by Indigenous and local communities around the world, I think are going to give us many of the answers that we need to take on board to move forward effectively. I think that both of the speakers highlighted the importance of the existing mechanisms of SGP and the Indigenous Conservation Initiative and other funding mechanisms which are there. But I think also highlighted that we need to go beyond that. We need to scale up. And I think from Hoda, you highlighted the importance to mainstream civil society, Indigenous people, youth into the full-sized and medium-sized portfolios of the GEF. In our view, there's no point in just focusing on a few percent of GEF resources going direct to civil society if civil society, Indigenous people, local community are not empowered within the overall program and portfolio. And I think that is, moving forward, an important area that we need to look at in the replenishment. We are positive about the changes which have been already made in the document during the last year of the replenishment process. And I think the key recognition of the need for a whole of society approach. We are never going to address the global challenges of biodiversity, climate change, land degradation, and waste unless we are able to mobilize the society as a whole And that, through GEF, needs more than the small grants program and other mechanisms. We have to look at ways of creating components within full-size and medium-sized projects which actually build on maybe the model of the small grants program or indigenous empowerment, and bring them in not as beneficiaries but as full partners in the delivery of the program. I think that is going to be quite critical. In terms of the possibility of that, I think in the introductory slides from Adriana, we saw that there were 850 expressions of interest from indigenous communities for involvement in the $22 million Inclusive Conservation Initiative. And that means that it was effectively oversubscribed by 50 or 100 times. And that is really the demand, the possibilities there. Of course, we cannot increase at this stage the funding by 80 or 100 times, but we need to do a better job of having an ambitious replenishment. From the GEF CSO network, our perspective is we need to target at least $7.5 billion rather than the current $5.3 billion. We need to be ambitious. And actually, for some of the programs, that is just still treading water because the real purchasing power of the GEF resources has declined over the last 30 years of the GEF. So we need to scale that up, and we need to work smart. If we can work smart and have strong commitments and engagement, and we can mobilize mass movements of public, civil society, women and youth, with the same resources, we can achieve much more. And I think that is, to us, is going to be the very critical thing about where we need to fine-tune the mechanisms moving forward. Even if we're restricted with resources, the total envelope, let's work smarter within the resources and maybe reduce the barriers and bureaucracy and to have greater engagement. And as Richard said, also to bring in private sector and other funding sources, philanthropy, to supplement the GEF resources. But I think to make this happen at the country level, we do need the support of all of the recipient member governments because they are in the driving seat for delivering the country programs. So I'll leave it at that, but I think we're making progress. And as was said, we need to do more. Thank you.
I think we lost Sagar. Are you still there?
Yeah. So Saga seemed to be a bit frozen. Maybe I can just carry on the session by asking Huda from Egypt really about the clear roles and expectations across the partnerships. So a recurring message from Consultation is that the role of civil society is not always clear. From Egypt's perspective, how should roles and expectations between governments, GEF agencies, and civil society be clarified in GEF 9 to ensure participation is meaningful and contributes to national priorities rather than remaining consultative or symbolic?
Back one step and then we'll go answer your question. Maybe when you were saying that having the small grant program as a different part than the full-size project, what I was saying is Egypt, for example, last cycle, we dedicated 20% of our star allocation directly to the small grant program, which means that we are really want to have all communities, to be part of whatever the country is doing. It's not only that the part of empowering, but having them on board will enrich the portfolio, will enrich the work on ground, and of course, without them, we will not have this, the implementation properly. End of the day, and having not the civil society and not you, I mean the whole society as local community, youth, and gender, having all of them on board will a little bit enrich the whole portfolio, the output of the portfolio of Egypt. When it comes to the roles that must be, for example, when it comes to the roles and expectation, the role must be clarified to ensure that civil society is a co-implementer, not just a consultant, as you were just saying. When it comes to government part, a little bit, maybe we can look into setting national priorities and ensure alignment with the multilateral commitment. And I think that most of the, right now, the civil society communities are attending the COPs. And I think that they are having separate, sessions to just highlight their concerns, their needs, and how the countries can support. Maybe it's a good part that we can see it from there. And when it comes to the GEF agencies, maybe they can facilitate the integration of the civil society voices into design and monitoring when it comes to the design of the project. And when it comes to when it comes to the part of the civil society, act as a co-implementer with defined responsibility. So more or less, if you have a defined responsibility, we can put it to be included in the design of the project or maybe on the portfolio. We do have here, I want to give an example when it comes to Egypt, small grant programs. We do have, it's already defines the clear roles for the CSOs in project design, monitoring, and delivery. They are all included. Maybe I'm a part, of the National Steering Committee, not of the GEF portfolio, but also with the small grant program. We do have this national implementation model. So we are included there, and we meet somehow, we see the whole project, and we meet the NGOs to hear them a little bit, to try to improve the concept that we see, because not all the NGOs are capacitated by end of the day. So somehow we requested, as the governmental part, we requested the small grant program, and they did it multiple times to have sort of a capacity building for the NGOs, the one working in the field previously and the one, just want to improve itself and to join the project in the future. And maybe we are having, sort of a lesson learned portfolio with a small grant program, to be skilled up a little bit and to improve our next cycle when it comes to the GEF 9 and ensuring the civil society's role and institutionalized across the partnership. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oda. I had a brief internet issue, but thanks, Faisal, for carrying on. I'd like to go back to Richard. Richard, GEF 9 discussions point towards increased finance for civil society alongside higher risk tolerance and a stronger whole of society participation. From Australia's perspective, how should GEF 9 define and track accountability so we can demonstrate that increased finance and risk-taking are delivering real results for people and nature, not just financial or procedural outputs? What should GEF 9 do differently in GEF 9 compared to previous cycles?
Thank you, Sagar, and good to see you back. Enhancing accountability and transparency is one of our priorities. The recent multilateral organization performance assessment of the GEF, which was concluded this year, the MOPAN assessment, are an important part of that transparency in highlighting the governance and what development results have been developed by the institution. A MOPAN assessment of the GEF, which I was part of the lead in terms of coordinating that, concluded a number of really key things. Firstly, that the GEF has been at the forefront of promoting collaboration across multilateral agencies in the environment and climate space, with enhanced multilateral collaboration supporting a coherent system-wide response to environmental crises based on comparative advantages. The GEF's policies, processes, and systems increasingly reflect good practice and standards. GEF is mobilizing co-financing increasingly, but ambitious steps are required to deliver on this potential. Operating policies and procedures are increasingly reflecting international norms and best practices, underpinned by clear and appropriate layering of responsibilities between the Secretariat and agencies. So there's some really strong positive things coming out of the assessment. We also welcome the 8th overall performance study of the GEF, the OPS 8, which complements this year's MOPAN assessment of the GEF. We are pleased to see that the project performance remains strong, which is consistent with achievement across replenishment periods and across focal areas. But there's areas that there can be improvement. We're concerned that only 59% of projects show broad adoption and agree that the GEF needs to ensure project successes are both systemic and sustainable. And in this context, we welcome the recommendation to incorporate sustainability into the project design. Personally, I'm pleased to see GEF interventions in drylands, Lower Mekong, and the Pacific and Caribbean in the SIDS, who are particularly vulnerable to climate and environmental impacts, have been increasingly aligned with regional and national priorities. And we welcome the finding that GEF has established robust environmental and social safeguards and advanced inclusion, delivering social economic co-benefits alongside environmental outcomes. As I mentioned before, this is particularly important for Indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth. And we also support enhanced monitoring of GEF financing results for these groups across people-centered indicators, improving the tracking of social economic co-benefits. This is an area that the GEF has been developing, and we are strongly supportive of further action in these areas. On governance reform, we support enhancing country ownership through the national steering committees, the operational focal points, capacity building, and targeted accreditation of entities, with the experience, as I mentioned before, around SIDS, Indigenous-led, private sector experience, and that whole of society approach. So there's more that can be done on that front. And with these comes responsibilities to engage and report on these results transparently. I fully support the ensuring financing to Indigenous peoples and local communities and youth, and noting that we need to look beyond the inclusive conservation initiative and other mechanism, and share the comment that's made earlier by Huda that we need to mainstream this work in a more inclusive way. I did also note there's a few questions coming through in the Q&A which haven't been responded, so I thought I'd just quickly mention responses to a couple of those. First of all, the comment about the 20% target, I assume that refers to the GBFF. As I've been pointing out, we need, in numerous discussions within the Council, this needs to be real and tangible, and funding not just sort of broadly for the purpose of supporting these groups, but it actually needs to be supportive and controlled and aligned with the ownership. And I think this is an area where the metric can and should improve, and there's been some really positive discussions around that. And secondly, the point about the small grants program and general funding, we fully support that. We need increased funding and increased directing of funding, and over a more effectiveness of that funding. So thank you very much for those additional questions, and sorry for straying, Sagar, into those other points. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Coming back to Hoda, even when resources are available, smaller and community-based organizations often face barriers in accessing GEF finance. From Egypt's perspective, what practical changes in GEF 9 could reduce administrative, co-financing, or procedural barriers for civil society, Indigenous people, youth, and local communities, while still maintaining fiduciary standards and national oversight?
When it comes to the improving the access and reducing barriers, most of the smaller organizations often struggle with the co-finance requirement and complex procedures a little bit. Practical changes could include reduced co-financing. When it comes to a project for community-based project, we can reduce the co-finance part. Maybe we can streamline the application model on small grants program. Simplified process a little bit. When it comes to the other countries, maybe we have this model. We a little bit when it comes to Egypt, we simplified this process. We did sort of an easy how can I say it, but an easy template a little bit, and we trained the people before, applying for this type of project. We train them, have a sort of they struggle throughout. We can respond with them via email, by phone, maybe by visits to the NGO who need it. And also we can dedicated small, we have, maybe we can work on dedicated small grants facilities within national allocation, building on the Egypt small grant success. Also, we can have the capacity building on, on a little bit, how can I say it? Maybe I don't know how can I say it, but completely without exclusion. Maybe we can, when the design of the project, the upcoming project, we are going to take into matter and to try to include more when it comes to the full-size project, medium-sized project, to include them. Already they are included throughout the process, but maybe maybe have it clearer part, it's reflected properly in the project document, although they are there in the implementation, but maybe if they can see and they are involved from the start, a little bit, that will help to improve the process and the implementation. And I think that I don't know, maybe in the design of a project, we do have a nice model, sort of a public hearing, before the design, even of the small grant program portfolio. When it comes to the design of the project, we held, while choosing the areas that we are going to choose to implement projects in there, we are trying to, to do a sort of a public hearing in the community on the level of the governorate, with all NGOs and the local communities there, and to have this, this consultation will help and to enrich the whole over project document. So we're trying to assure that everyone is there and involved, but maybe in the upcoming period, we are trying to include more or less the NGOs, not only the NGOs, but also the private sector, and to have the gender balance, included in the design of the project, because I think that this is more or less the direction of the upcoming cycle for the GEF 9 as part of the replenishment team. So I think maybe, yeah, a little bit to think how we can have this model clearly, put it clearly, sort of a proper vision. And I think after this meeting, maybe we can have like, sort of how can a little bit, I'm trying to improvise, to have sort of some point, some I don't know how to say it, Sagar, but we have to go out from this this meeting with a sort of I don't know, a little bit trying to give it.
No worries,
But
Soda.
maybe we have to have, the output of this meeting, to enrich it into some points a little bit. Maybe I can use it as a country, and maybe we can already also provide it for during the next GEF 9th replenishment meeting, to be included within negotiation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And the goal is that these conversations feed back into the replenishment meetings and shape GEF 9 today and in the next 4 years after we agree on the policy and programming of GEF 9. Coming back to you, Faisal, and taking a step back from the discussion, based on what you've heard today on finance, risk, access, roles, and accountability, what are the two most important signals GEF 9 must send to civil society to show that whole of society approach will translate into real change during the next cycle?
So I think it's very critical that whole of society is not just a slogan, but it's a real operational approach that is going to change the way, the business as usual of how things are done. And that civil society, women and youth are rarely as implementation partners or leading partners in the implementation of all the GEF portfolio. Small grants, medium-sized, full-sized initiatives rarely need to put people front and center if they're going to transform the way that society is working or reacting or controlling or addressing environmental problems. We are not going to solve problems just by consultant studies and reports and seminars and workshops. We have to empower people to make the change. And I think GEF has so many tools and models which are important, and many have been raised in this discussion. But I think what we need to do is have that toolkit for GEF 9 implementation that draws on those, and drawing on the fact that GEF has agreed to a high risk threshold. Then let every flower bloom, let these innovative and other ways forward really take the lead in really looking at new way of doing things. I think we have to break out from business as usual. What has worked well the last 30 years, yes, that's good, but look at the mess that we're in as a planet. We need something new and innovative. We have to think out of the box, and we have to empower those groups. So I think that's the key message, that GEF needs to make civil society, indigenous people, local community, women and youth as real partners for delivery. And then we have to look at adjusting the mechanisms and tools and other things, and not reinvent the wheel. Just from this panel session, we've got a lot of good ideas, and around the world in all the GEF implementation, we've got many good ideas. Let's really facilitate and make those happen, and really use that to transform GEF 9. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faisal. Now I want to turn to our GEF CEO, Carlos Manuel. Carlos, you have heard today about the need for increased and simplified finance, greater risk tolerance, clearer roles across the partnership, and a stronger accountability to results that matter to people and nature. From your perspective, what are the most important decisions or shifts needed to embed the whole of society approach across GEF 9 in a way that delivers real impact on the ground? And how should the GEF Secretariat help ensure that these commitments translate into practice across agencies, countries, and programs?
Thank you, Sagar, for your questions. I need like 3.5 hours to really go through them, but I will do my best to do it very quickly. First, let me thank Adriana, Gabriela, and your teams for putting together this very interesting dialogue. Second, let me congratulate the CSO network for their leadership, but most importantly, for continue to push for an active role of civil society in the context of what the GEF does. And just, of course, my big thanks to the GEF Council co-chair and Hora as a council member as well. There are 3 reasons why I've been pushing and pushing. And let me tell you, pushing without meaning that there is any resistance at all internally at the GEF Secretariat. I've been pushing and pushing to increase the role of civil society in the GEF business model for 3 reasons. The first reason is that the GEF needs to understand that in order to achieve our institutional mandate, which is generating global environment benefit, we need to work with everyone who is part of the solution. And through the years, we concentrate our effort in energy with governments. And yes, of course, the SGP has been, a fantastic program, but still small. And yes, of course, it depends a lot on different governments, different countries, on how they can participate in the START portfolio. So my first point is that we need to accept that there's a change of paradigm happening in the GEF as we look into the wider multilateral environment where non-state actors are becoming more and more protagonists. And I want the GEF to be ahead of the curve. In less time that we believe, the non-state actors will be as important in terms of decisions and global decisions as states. And I think that that is something very important. So my first point is that the GEF needs to understand that we need to support, and when we support, it's not moral support. We're talking about financing because we are a financial institution. We need to support everyone who is part of the solution. And that support is done based on different scales and different elements that we're starting to realize. The second element why I strongly believe that we need to go from where we were to a whole of a government, whole of a society approach, and I want to respond to Faisal comments and challenges. I mean, Faisal, you put it very clearly on what are the challenges. I'll be there in a minute, but my second point is that civil society give us something no other stakeholder can give us, which is an expectation of sustainability of what we do within the GEF investment in the GEF portfolio. Civil society is there and will not change like government do change. I'll give you one simple example of something that happened in my early days at the GEF, where I was informed that a government wanted to degassette a protected area that we created 20 years before. And that is why, and the reason why they were degassetting that protected area is because the government found oil and gas beneath that protected area. When we created that protected area 20 years ago with the expectation that that protected area will be there forever, providing environmental services for the well-being of humans, we never work with civil society. We just work with the central government. And there are 17 local communities around that protected area, which were really disappointed by the government decision to degassette because they found oil and gas. If we were able to engage civil society in the creation of that protected areas 20 years ago, I bet that the government will never change or degassette that protected area. And the third element, which is extremely important to me, has to do with what I call the moral imperative. And allow me to philosophize a little bit today, because I want to make it very clear what I mean by a moral imperative. We humans are the only species in Earth that can cooperate and come together around fictions that give us the possibility of cooperating and organize ourselves. When the famous author of the book Species, Yuval Noah Harari, wrote that who will do better if you put in an isolated island a human? If you put a human and a chimpanzee in an isolated island, who will do better? Of course, the chimpanzee will do better than the human. But if you put 100 humans and 100 chimpanzees, who will do better? Without any doubt, everyone will agree that humans will do better, 100 humans will do better than 100 chimpanzees. Why? Because humans will begin organizing themselves around fictions. Let me mention some fictions. Money. Money is a piece of paper which is worthless, but humans give value and trust on others will give it. The state and government is another fiction. I mean, there are no borders in planet Earth, and we all accept the authority of governments because we agree on that. Private sector is another fiction. I mean, and corporations, we cannot touch, we cannot jail a corporation. It's only humans. And we can go with many other elements. So civil society is in the core of what sustains the humans in planet Earth. And I think that with being pragmatical, because humans can cooperate in a flexible way in large groups, they share stories around it and they believe and align their behaviors. but also, and most importantly, we build on complex society around these abstract ideas. So if we are willing to overcome the global challenges on environment, we need to recognize that civil society is in the center of that. And for me, the biggest global challenge is not climate change, loss of biodiversity, pollution. The biggest challenge humans do have today is the lack of cooperation around global common threats. Huh? We are finishing today UNEA 7 without any strong decision. We just went to COP 30 and went through many COPs, and we're coming more and more frustrated around the lack of possibilities to cooperate, even though it is within the genes of humans to really cooperate. It makes the difference from other species. In that context, the context of the moral imperative for the GEF to be financing and supporting civil society is that I strongly believe that the GEF in this transition from GEF 8 to GEF 9 towards GEF 10 has to have very clear role and expectation of what will be the CSO engagement across the GEF partnership. It's not just having Gabriela and Adriana and Uxue and many others in the partnership division thinking on how we can create new funds or new mechanism. It's much more than that. It has to do with this element that creates a clear roles and responsibilities of what we want to do across the JET partnership. Also, as we move into that, and I once more, as Adriana explained it, what we are doing in JEF 9 is testing, improving that the whole of society, concentrating in gender, indigenous group, local communities, and youth, will give us the real understanding on how we address the need to support civil society in a comprehensive, integrated, long-term manner. And for that, we need to be innovative. We need, once more, to establish clear roles and responsibilities of what we want to do with civil society. We need to increase and simplify finance for community-led actions, and this is something that is extremely important. I've been talking with many of my colleagues, particularly those who are managing the IPLC funds, on how do we do direct access without losing the quality of the project, without losing the many policies around transparency and fiduciary. And I think that what we have done in ICI is an excellent example of direct finance to local communities, in this case, indigenous groups. So I think that we have an excellent precedent on what that should look like. And yes, of course, Faisal, I totally agree with you that the whole of our society is not a branding, is not an empty good faith aspiration. It's something that we need to build. And for that, we don't have all the solutions and responses with the Secretariat. We don't have all the solutions and responses. And we invite you all to help us build the structure of what a whole of a society should look like. So I think that what we've been presenting in GEF 9 is a very strong step forward in that direction. It will be a little bit of learning by doing, but I think that we need to really see GEF 9 as the main transition towards the previous model, where civil society was, embedded in many different ways, but at a scale that is not generating an impact that we want. So GEF 9 will be that transition. And I think that by the end of GEF 9, based on the results, based on the analysis, and based on the feedback that we will be receiving from civil society, we will be in a much better position to be more efficient and more effective. So with these introductory words, Sagar, Faisal, Adriana, and Gabriela, and thanks to Richard and Hoda, I will be very, very happy to have whatever exchange you want me to have with participants. Thank you so much.
Carlos Manuel, one more question before we open up for Q&A. As GEF9 discussions continue, what is one practical signal or decision that would demonstrate that whole of society approach is being taken seriously in how GEF9 will operate and deliver on the ground? In 2 minutes, 3 minutes maximum, if you could.
Well, I think that the first thing is the concepts. We need to agree on concepts, and we need to explain the concepts. And the whole of a society and the whole of a government are two main concepts or pillars that will sustain a programming proposal for GEF9. Because on one side, the whole of a government approach is a effectiveness imperative. We cannot expect to change the world if governments from the north and south, east and west continue to invest much more financial resources in activities that destroy nature and contribute to climate change to what they invest in reverting that. So the whole of a government approach looks to deal with that, looking for policy coherence in national development policies and in budgeting, but also it will help us promote a better mobilization of domestic resources, which are, at the end of the day, it is what it will make the big change. More political coherence on one side, effectiveness in mobilizing domestic resources. And here is where ODA and private sector can complement to what every single country is doing. So that is what we aim over there. On the other side, the whole of a society wants to bring around the GEF those relevant stakeholders that are working at the level of each one of the conventions that we are working with, because we can diffuse ourselves when we talk about civil society and how do we support civil society. We should be supporting civil society in the context of those stakeholders that are working at the convention level, because we are the financial mechanism of the convention. That doesn't mean that our work should be limited to the COP process or to the convention decision-making processes. It has to do with regards to the implementation of what has been agreed in the convention. And the best example is the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Without looking at civil society as a relevant stakeholders, once more, we will miss the targets as it happens with the Aichi targets. So these are some of my ideas, or the ideas of the Secretariat Sagar with regards to this, the concepts. Now, the concepts needs substance. And this is where Adriana is leading this very interesting process that she explained at the beginning of this meeting on how we are presenting a set of different ideas. Coming out of GEF 8, where we agreed that yes, SGP was extremely successful, but not enough. And we did what we did. And I thank the Council for their vision and leadership and giving us marching orders to do the major reform that we did in SGP. So SGP is a good example of things that can be improved. Now that we have a new SGP 2.0, we can build on that. We can build on what we've been doing with indigenous communities, and we need to look across the GEF portfolio and see the multiple positive contribution that civil society is doing. So as you go from concept into programming proposal, then you go to the financial proposal. And Sagar, for the third replenishment meeting happening on the 19th of January in Bonn, we will be presenting, as you know very well, the financial scenarios for GEF9. So this is kind of the structure of what we have planned. Of course, in every replenishment, donors are always challenged with competitive priorities. Every single donor to the GEF has said we need to increase and upscale the work that we've been doing with civil society, which is music to our ears. It is up to us to go from concept to programming to budget, and from there on, understand that in GEF 10, the dynamics internally within the GEF will be a little bit different, because the situation will not be much better than it is today, and we will be challenged. And here's where I wish, I expect, with the participation of everyone here, for the GEF to be the leading multilateral agency in breaking new ground, in bringing non-state actors in the core of our business model.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos Manuel. Now I would like to open the floor for Q&A. You can raise your hand if you'd like to ask questions. I would like to sincerely request not to make statements. Please be as concise as possible in asking your questions. And when you raise your hand, I can allow you to speak. If you have questions about processes or agencies or different things about how you can work locally or detailed question, feel free to write them, and we will also be happy to reply in person. I will now give the floor to Andrew. You may unmute and speak.
Good afternoon. I'm calling from Zambia.
Please continue.
I hope I'm clear. Am I clear?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yes. The question that I have is, my organization, I think we work with the community, and our conservation area is about 60,000 hectares. I'm sure at some point, people could come to say, no, they could just come for carbon. Although we were not interested so much into carbon, we wanted to cultivate the spirit of livelihood. I think I applied, I think, a long time ago under GF 5. I think my proposal could not go through in our organization. And we thank God that this year you have advertised again. We are going to try. To me, I really want to appreciate you, because at some point GF looked like it has, it is not participating so much. Meanwhile, your impacts were everywhere. I hope that this is the beginning of the turning around to make sure that we move with the objectives. Otherwise, I admire the objective of GF, and they are very reciprocal to the communities. The communities quickly adapt to them, and the livelihood quickly improves. So to me, I'm very, very happy. Thank you so much for the team that is working hard to make sure that we are back into form. Thank you so much. That was my contribution.
Thank you, Andrew, for your comment. And let me share my dream, if I can say so, in a very humble manner. I wish one day civil society, subnational governments, and private sector doesn't need to go to the central government for an endorsement letter to access the GEF resources. This is a dream I have. Why? Because I understand very clearly that the GEF, in order to deliver with their mandate, should include everyone who is part of the solution. And yes, of course, we will never, ever downscale the financial support to central governments, because at the end of the day, the GEF is a political organization created by governments. But there are a clear tendency of decentralization and recognition of non-state actors. So I strongly believe that the shareholders of the GEF, which are the governments, 187, little by little, will be understanding that their aspiration for sustainability will require adjustment and changes by which multilateral organizations can support directly other relevant stakeholders. We work at the subnational level, but with the Sustainable Cities IP, but they need endorsement letter from the central government. And yes, civil society is exactly the same thing. But when I see that from GEF 7 to GEF 8, we double, and Gabriela, correct me in the numbers, we double the amount of countries allocating STAR resources to SCP. The tendency is very clear to me. The tendency is that governments understand that it makes a lot of sense based in impacts and resources to work closer to civil society. Unfortunately, not every country in planet Earth understands this, but this is an ongoing process. And I think that we're planting a seed for a more comprehensive GEF. At the end of the day, the decisions are taken from the assembly down to the council and the GEF secretariat with all the structures implements them. But I strongly believe I see tendency that goes into that direction. And I hope one day the assembly, their replenishment process, and council endorsing their replenishment outcomes will do and take those decisions by which we can provide direct access to some relevant stakeholders. So if we're talking about direct access, let's look at in every single angle, not just direct access from certain civil society groups to the GEF resources, because direct access with a political screening process is not direct access. I have seen many times governments not willing to endorse a very interesting subnational proposal because the mayor or the governor is from a different political party than the one that is ruling at the executive branch. And I understand that is natural to the political systems, but in terms of the global challenges, I think that we need to move in that direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much for responding to that question. I will now take 3 questions. Luis, you may unmute your microphone and ask the question.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the option. It's really a quick question. What are the chances in terms of the GEF 9 to grow up the size of the grants? I mean, right now we're talking about the small grants, but could be a possibility that size of a small increase into a medium grant for local CSOs more than, talking directly with them and not with the intervention of the implementation partners that you already know and they are the big ones, because normally it's very complicated and in some occasions to match or because the implementation partners are right now taking these medium and big size funds to be implemented, and sometimes the local partners, the ones that are more in contact with the indigenous peoples and local communities, they are not taking that chances to obtain the funds. So are there any possibilities for that size of the grants can grow up into medium for local CSOs? That's my question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for your question. We will take 2 more questions and we will come back to answering them. Wamuma, could you unmute your microphone and ask your question? If you're not available, okay, I can see you have unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much. I'm calling from Uganda. We appreciate you got some funding from GEF 9 and we implemented a project on 5 kilometers on Natal River restoration. But our concern is that the community has got a lot of interest and they have a lot of high demand over the same. We also request that since this new request sent, we hope to apply and also get facilitated so that we can also address to other river banks which are also bare with no trees. We hope that when we work in that direction, we shall help the community and also have the climate change and also global warming will be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Omama. Next, I will take a question from Anedi, and I will open the floor for answers. Anedi, could you unmute your microphone?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Please continue.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anedi Iyan. I'm speaking from Nigeria, Niger Delta. Hello?
Yes, please continue. We can hear you.
Hello?
Anedi,
Yeah, you
we
can
can hear
continue.
you.
We hear you
can
well.
Continue. We hear you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for having this opportunity to speak. I want to appreciate all the work of GEF and the impact they are creating in the former GEF project. But I want to find out the funding mechanism that supports inclusion of youths and women in this forthcoming GEF project, and how local communities and youth groups and women groups can better benefit from these programs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for the
Please.
questions. Luis, muchas gracias por tu pregunta. So, from GEF 6 to GEF 7, unfortunately, we had a decrease in the GEF funding, but I'm very happy that during the GEF 8 replenishment, it went back a little bit, and we saw wonderful things in the SCP. One was a big amount of countries assigning their star resources to SCP. I mean, this is a very strong positive signal on those countries that they believe that the civil society is a trusted, effective partner, because the star resources are not enough for governments to do everything that they want. So that is why I'm super happy that we were able to increase it, but it is far from being enough. In GEF 8 we allocate less than $1 million for each country in SCP, and we went from, I don't know, Gabriel, 120 countries to 133 countries, something like that.
135 countries, yes.
I'm not bad in my numbers, so
no, you're not.
that is fantastic. I mean, that is fantastic. The fact that the number of countries were increased and the fact that the allocation from central governments increased, it is a very strong signal that we need to read very clearly. And that is why we didn't hesitate at all to come up with this concept of whole of a society approach, where we have the full intention to really materialize that in ways that I explained before. Now, looking into GEF 9, yes, of course, there will be a bigger budget than in theory. There will be a bigger budget than GEF 8. But again, one of the very interesting things out of a replenishment process is the multiple competitive priorities. I mean, on one side, our number one priority is bring resources to the star and to the countries. Those resources needs to be complemented with the IPs, but we see emerging windows One is the blended finance and non-grant instrument that will grow substantially. Probably it will be around 10% of the GEF 9 budget. And yes, of course, there is a clear intention of donors to increase the budget for SCP in GEF 9 compared to GEF 8. How much? We still don't know because we are just starting the process of analyzing the financial scenario, and that will happen in January. I hope that we can increase substantially the support. On how to access the GEF resources for civil society, well, we got different windows, and Adriana and Gabriela explained a little bit about that. But well, our operative system works through a political and operational focal point. So everyone that hasn't been able to access GEF funding for civil society, my recommendation is to immediately begin engaging with the operational focal point and begin cultivating a relationship. I mean, the work I did in Costa Rica with SCP has been very consistent through the years because we defined to work on 3 watersheds, basins, and everyone in those basins, every organized civil society may have the possibility to access the GEF resources through the work. And that was the model that we designed 12 years ago and continues to work. And we see the impact. We see the impact in the restoration and the conservation of the basin. And we see a new economic model, not based on cattle ranching and land use change and deforestation, rather than on different options from traditional agriculture through ecotourism and payment for environmental services. So access to the GEF resources requires a process. Of course, we have to be closer to the operational focal point and support them in their work. Many of the operational focal points, particularly in less developed countries or a small development island states, have all kind of limitation, and that is why in GEF 8 we put a budget line to support the work of operational focal points. Looking to GEF 9, we will continue to promote with the donors a budget line that continues or increases. I hope that increases the funding so they can do the outreach, not the resources for the operational focal points, not just to do the overview and the basic work of taking care of the GEF portfolio, but also to do a lot of outreach. And that outreach will be beneficiary to civil society. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's take 2 more questions. Samuel, please unmute your microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saga. Having listened to the panelists, I think I am satisfied that we are making progress. I have a couple of observations. I'll be very brief. Yeah, the first one is how would the GEFSEC and the CSO network enhance or support some of the countries to improve the collaboration between the GEF CSO network or the NGOs that are members of the network in establishing this national steering committee where decisions on how resources for the country is to be apportioned, especially when it's coming to replenishment as the one we are going to witness come July or June 2026. I have chanced on a document which gives me a little bit of worry, which was produced by the GEFSEC 5th GBBF Council meeting, December 19, 2025, virtual meeting. in that document, it seems there is a little bit of conflict between indigenous peoples and local communities and civil society, where in paragraph 14, there was a sentence that, let me read. 14. That under certain circumstances, non-governmental organizations claims that they represent IPLCs will require confirmation by IPLCs governing structures themselves as part of the GEF agency's due diligence mentioned above. I think we have to be, my question then is, are we putting every country together as having IPs, and for that matter, where they don't exist, then the NGOs have to be given an instruction to go and take instruction from a governing council or structure which does not exist in that country? Thank you very much. I hope I make myself very clear.
Thank you, Samuel. Let's briefly also take questions from Alio. Alio, if you could unmute your microphone. And try to be very brief. We are running out of time, but we are still trying to accommodate. Thank you. All right. I don't think we have Alio. So I would maybe ask Faisal to take a bit of that, but also to note the civil society network doesn't have the observer status in GBFF. But
Hello.
maybe somebody from the GEF.
Hello, I am back.
Yes, please ask your question.
Yes, I just want to ask a question and also a comment. I want to know, will there be any adjustment in the GEF9, like in the amount of funds or grants that is giving to CSOs? Like, we understand it's a small grant fund. And also the next suggestion is like, we experience so many things in implementation. The GEF project cycle is normally 1 year, but then during the 1 year, it is very, very short to implement some of these projects and be able to monitor them before the lifespan of the project. Like, for instance, if a CSO or an NGO is implementing a project on agroforestry, after one year, it's very short for agroforestry. Like, for instance, you start a nursery and you want to do the nursery planting, you want to do the monitoring. The lifespan is very short. And also the amount of grant that is giving to CSOs is also small for such kind of activities implementation. That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Faisal, I would let you respond.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thanks, Samuel, for those couple of questions, and Alio for your comment. I think this is a very important reform proposed under the GEF9 process to basically to encourage all of the recipient countries to have a national steering committee and to involve the different stakeholders on that national steering committee. So I think from the GEF CSO network, yes, we're very keen to see representation on such national steering committees for GEF of civil society representatives. I think that's an important strategy and way forward. That has or is already happening in countries like the Philippines and elsewhere already. That has enriched the National Steering Committee by having civil society engagement. So we hope that this will be something more institutionalized in the future. And there have been previous decisions by the GEF Council to call on the operational focal points to organize at least once a year a meeting with civil society and indigenous people, local organization, community organizations in the countries to discuss about the possibility of partnership. And I think if we can create these mechanisms at country level, those will be an important potential way forward. I can't really comment on the GBFF paper, but of course, I think the general point is that it's important to recognize that indigenous people, local community have the right of self-identification, and we should be recognizing those rights and empowering them. In terms of the funding cycle for SGP, I think it all depends a little bit about the level of resources, and that varies per country. Some countries set a ceiling as 20,000, some as 50,000, and then sometime there is a certain cycle that's set. But I think we all know if we're going to really safeguard the environment, we need to be looking at longer time frames. So I think we need to look in the way forward of having some more continuous or predictable process. And I think that can be done by bringing civil society more into the medium and the large size of projects and programs as partners, building on the success of the small grants program. I think that can lead to longer term interventions and more scaled up interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. We are running out of time, so we will not be taking any more questions. A big thank you to all our panelists, Richard, Hoda, Faisal, Carlos Manuel, for sharing your insights with us today. And with this, I'd like to hand over back to Carlos Manuel to bring the session to a close.
Well, thank you so much, Sagar, and I want to thank everyone who has participated today in this very important event. A couple of messages. Yes, we concentrate a lot of today's discussion on the SGP because SGP has been there for 30 years. But SGP is not the whole of a society approach. And I want to really underline this element. Most probably SGP will be in the core of what we do, in that concept that needs translated into financial mechanisms and a set of other policies of the whole of a society approach. And the fact that in GEF 8 we did SGP 2.0, we just not brought new agencies. We also did something that for me was one of the main elements by which we needed a reform of SGP. When Gabriela and myself came up in 4 years ago, thinking on improving SGP, one big reason for me to assume the challenge and even the political cost of changing it, because we got an agency that has been implemented very successfully for many years, but was not very happy, to be very frank, with the idea of bringing new agencies. I said, we need to turn around the grant non-grant ratio of SGP, and it is happening. So more money is being channeled directly to the grantee. Of course, I don't have bias with the non-grant elements because there are important elements in what we call non-grant that makes the grant successful. But this is something that is extremely, extremely important. We took the decision to universalize, to encourage the allocation of staff resources, but also we came up with the challenge and the macrofinance program, which will diversify options and ways to channel resources. But SGP is not the whole of a society approach. And the whole of a society approach, it will be kind of a concept that is being developed. And that is why I, in the objectives of this meeting, we talk about clear roles and expectations. And this is something that we need to build with the CSO network. So I want to thank everyone for today's exchange. I really love having this exchange as a preparatory session to Consul. And as I read politically, I put my political glasses and I read what happened in GEF 8. I think that we are in a unique, positive position to be very ambitious on what we want the GEF to do in the future with non-state actors. And yes, of course, GEF 9 will be kind of a transition towards that direction. I also want to thank the Council for their vision and leadership on that transformation and on supporting this, I will say, relatively abstract concept. I want to be very clear, Faisal. Yes, you're right. At this point, the whole of a society is an aspiration. We still don't have, it's a concept. We still don't have the structure, but under the leadership of Adriana, I trust that we will be getting into those details. Of course, the role of the CSO is super important. In GEF 9, through the country engagement strategy, which is the budgeting process to support a lot of workshops and activities, will emphasize the work of the operational focal points in civil society at the regional and country level. And that will be definitely a game changer. So once more, I would like to conclude by saying that we humans, we were able to create fictions. We were able to cooperate based on those fictions, and that has gave us a lot of progress. That is why it is so important for the GEF to really recognize that at the end of the day, it is civil society, the one that will guide us into the solutions, where governments and private sector will complement with them in ways that we can be hopeful, because if you see the science, the situation is not that good at all. And yes, the number one global challenge that we have today is the lack of cooperation between nations. So thank you so much, Adriana, Gabriela. Thank you so much, Richard Hoda. Thank you so much, Faisal, Sagar, and everyone that has participated today. I feel super happy with this exchange. And I hope that we will have a very productive, constructive set of council meetings next week. So thank you so much, everyone, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much,
Carlos
everyone.
Manuel.
Thank you, Carlos Manuel.
Thank you. Bye.
Great,
Bye.
great
Thank you,
partnership
Hoda
with
and
the
Richard,
CSO
for still being awake.
I'm trying.
Richard, you can go to bed now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Hoda, you can have
Thank
your
you so
free
much.
Me
afternoon.
too. Me too.
Friday.
Thank you.
Me too.
Bye. Have a good
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you all. This has been
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
Sagar and
Oh my
Faisal.
God.
Wonderful.
I'm so happy. It looks like every time we improve, and our
Yeah.
two teams working together as a single team. That's what we want.
I'm gonna stop the recording. It's okay?
Thank
Yes.
you,
Thank you.
Regine.
Thank you
And
very much.
yes, and thank you,
Regine.
Regine,